Oh, the sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting soft shadows across a pristine bedroom. A boy sat on the edge of the bed, his face a mask of uncertainty. The house was silent, yet the weight of a new reality pressed down on him. Across the hall, a girl he barely knew was unpacking her belongings, their worlds about to collide in ways neither could have predicted. "How did my life come to this?" he murmured, the question hanging heavy in the stillness. Life had always been straightforward for him, quiet, predictable, and blissfully uneventful. But everything changed when his father remarried. Suddenly, he found himself sharing a roof with a stranger, a girl whose presence turned his once peaceful sanctuary into an unpredictable maze of emotions. She wasn't just any girl. She was confident, sharp-tongued, and had an aura that made it impossible to ignore her. From the moment she walked into his life, it was clear she wasn't planning to blend into the background. But how do you navigate a relationship with someone who's technically family yet feels like a complete stranger? Their first days under the same roof were filled with awkward encounters. She'd breeze into the kitchen in the morning, her casual confidence clashing with his quiet demeanor. He'd retreat to his room, seeking solitude, only to hear her music drifting through the walls, a constant reminder of her presence. One evening he found her standing in the doorway of his room, her arms crossed and a teasing smirk on her lips. "You always this boring, or is this just for me?" she quipped, her voice laced with mockery. He didn't know whether to laugh or bristle at her words. "And you always this annoying?" he shot back, surprised by his own boldness. That exchange set the tone for their interactions, a mix of banter, frustration, and an unspoken curiosity that neither wanted to admit. Despite their constant clashes, moments of understanding began to creep into their lives. One night, he found her sitting alone on the balcony, her usually sharp eyes softened by the moonlight. "You don't have to pretend you're okay all the time," he said, surprising even himself with the sincerity in his voice. She glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "And you don't have to act like you're indifferent." In that brief exchange, a crack appeared in the wall between them. It was a fleeting moment, but it left him wondering, was there more to her than the confident facade she wore? As days turned into weeks, he found himself drawn to her, not out of affection, but out of intrigue. She was an enigma, a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. Why did she put up walls so high no one could climb them? What had shaped her into the person she was today? One day, he caught her staring at an old photo, her eyes distant. He wanted to ask her about it, to peel back another layer of the mystery she embodied, but the words caught in his throat. Would she ever let him in, or was he destined to always stand on the outside? Their relationship began to shift in subtle ways. He started noticing the small things, how she hummed under her breath when she thought no one was listening, or how her sharp comments often masked her own insecurities. She, too, seemed to see him in a new light. "You're not as boring as I thought," she admitted one day, a rare hint of warmth in her voice. "Thanks, I guess," he replied, unsure whether to take it as a compliment. But just as they began to find common ground, the weight of their circumstances loomed large. They weren't just two people trying to navigate a relationship. They were step-siblings, bound by a dynamic neither had chosen. The turning point came during a family dinner. Their parents, blissfully unaware of the complexities brewing between the two, announced a trip, leaving them alone in the house for a weekend. The prospect of uninterrupted time together filled him with equal parts dread and anticipation. Would it bring them closer, or would it tear apart the fragile bond they were beginning to form? As they cleaned up after dinner, she leaned against the counter, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "Think you can survive a weekend with me?" He met her gaze, a smirk tugging at his lips. "Only if you can survive a weekend without annoying me." The weekend brought its share of chaos. Arguments over what to watch on TV, battles over who got the last slice of pizza, and an unexpected moment where they worked together to fix a broken light. It was in those moments of shared frustration and unexpected teamwork that he began to see her differently. She wasn't just the confident, teasing girl she appeared to be. She was vulnerable, flawed, and, in her own way, just as lost as he was. But the question lingered. Could they ever truly understand each other? Or were they destined to remain at odds? As the weekend drew to a close, they found themselves on the balcony once again, the city lights twinkling in the distance. "Maybe this isn't so bad," she said softly, her voice carrying a hint of something he couldn't quite place. "Maybe," he replied, unsure of what the future held, but certain that their story was far from over. Their journey had only just begun, filled with questions, challenges, and a bond that neither of them fully understood. Want to see how this complex relationship unfolds? Subscribe to Ani Rewatch so you don't miss the next chapter of this unforgettable story.